This is the Lasgidi Farmer Podcast.
So wonderful to have you today. I'm very excited looking at the transformation going on in the agriculture space with technology infusion. So I want to quickly welcome everyone listening to us today. Welcome to the Lasgidi Farmer Podcast, the platform where we discuss practical innovations and real solutions shaping the future of agriculture in Nigeria. In today's episode, especially exciting, we'll be exploring the digital revolution in Nigeria agriculture, how mobile phones, radio, the internet, and other ICTs are transforming agricultural extension services and reaching smallholder farmers across the country. So to guide us through this important conversation, we have a true expert with us in the house. Our guest is Professor Taofeeq Oyedeji Yekinni, a distinguished professor of agricultural extension communication in the Department of Agricultural Extension and Rural Development at the University of Ibadan. So with many years of research and teaching focus on ICTs in agriculture, farmers' access to information, climate change, communication, and rural development, Professor Yekinni has published extensively on how digital tools can bridge the gap between research, extension officers, and smallholder farmers. His work is highly relevant to the challenges and opportunities we face in modernizing Nigeria's agricultural extension system. Professor Yekinni, thank you for making the time to join us today. I want you to briefly say a few things, introduce yourself so we get the early spark for today's conversation. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Yes, I am Professor Taofeeq Yekinni. My area of specialization is ICT in development, ICT in extension communication precisely. It has been an area of immense interest to me, especially when we see how this tool has been used elsewhere in some other climes to solve familiar problems that we have also in this country. And so, there's no need to reinvent the wheel. When we see something being done somewhere and the wherewithal to do it in terms of will and then probably basic facilities needed are available, you just wish that, okay, why not? If other people can do it, why can't we do it? So that is actually a motivation for me, and that has actually sustained my interest in this particular area of research and engagement in development, to see how we can measure up and, of course, take the traditional problem of agriculture to solve it and to make agriculture go to where we wish it could be. I'm very delighted to be on this platform. I want to commend you for what you are doing. Making the information available to the all those who need it among the stakeholders in the field of agriculture. Not only farmer. You call the Farmer Podcast. I believe it's a podcast for all stakeholders. Of course, if you are an expert or a researcher, a lecturer, or whatever you are, or a station agent. This kind of platform is very useful because what you get here will be like a live experience as if you are there, right, on the field yourself. So I commend what you are doing, and I actually recommend this kind of platform for those who are stakeholders in this field.
Thank you so much, Professor Yekinni. That was really, really lovely. I'm so happy about the positive and great remarks you are passing about what you are doing. But honestly, without having researchers, people in the field like you that are doing great work for us to actually take the content to the farmers, we are actually doing nothing, right? So this platform is big on collaboration, to impact the food system. So we've got distinguished personality in the house, Professor Stella Odebode, saying good one, and we have other participant as well, Ibrahim Abdullah. I'm sure that they are listening to us right now. Welcome, Professor Stella Odebode. If everybody in the audience, if you've got question, contribution, you can always put in into the comment section while we address it as we go. So I will move on to the first question, Professor Yekin. You've talked about the importance of application of technology in food system, agricultural system as well, like it's been done elsewhere, so that we can see the same results. So you were talking about, what interested you in this part, but I just want you to expand more on it. What first drew you into the studying of ICTs in the field? You spent several years researching agricultural extension communication, but I just want to know what drew you into that space.
Yeah, thank you very much. Sometime 1992, I used to have this magazine from CTA. We call it Sport magazine. It's all about agriculture and agriculture as it's practiced else. I mean, all over places. And that particular edition, they came up with changing paradigm in extension delivery. They talk about the possibility of ICT coming on board and being available to all the people. And then when that comes, what will happen to extension? So that was the discussion of that particular edition of the magazine. So it interested me a lot because they forecasted into the future of what the world would look like when ICT become more pervasive and then available to all and sundry, including farmers and then extension agents and even their organizations. So there was an argument that would that take extension out of relevance such that the personnel will no longer be necessary, such that it was the organizations that will be communicating directly to the farmers. They argued in that particular episode, 1992, that no, extension agents will still be very relevant. What will happen is they will be better in the delivery of their services. So, over time, that particular hypothesis happened to have been proven beyond doubt because now elsewhere where ICT have been consistently utilized and adopted in organization elsewhere, some other climes, extension personnel are still very, very relevant. They are still there. Now, in our own climb here, I see that particular whatever being very relevant to us because there are estimation of the ratio of farmer extension agents to farmer hovering around 1 to 3,000. In reality, how can that be effective? It can never be. It can never be effective. It can never be effective. So, what we can do is to leverage technology to see how this particular service can be delivered effectively to make sure that those who need to have the information have it. It is not the problem is not about substance or content with us as per what to tell the farmers, how to guide them appropriately. That's not the problem with extension systems or agricultural systems in Nigeria. The problem is how to take this information to their disposal at the right time. So I see this particular technology as a stopgap and something that is really necessary for us to achieve effective extension delivery in Nigeria. So that happened to be an area of interest to me. And of course, because of my own interest also in ICT itself, application of ICT generally, so it some of my lecturers, saw this in me, and said, no, if anybody should do it, you should do it, because you have also taken interest in ICT even while your program, so you should go further to look at how to apply ICT into agricultural delivery. So this is a major motivation for me to carve this particular niche out of for myself in agricultural research and development endeavors. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I'm happy to hear, how this wasn't just a field as a comeback, but because there was real need and real gap in which you attended to bridge. And I like that you know, approach the question that is on everyone's mind: how would extension adapt against emerging technology rise? It's not just about digital tools anymore. We are having social media, and especially in the age of artificial intelligence. So people are saying artificial intelligence is going to replace farmers, is going to replace extension agents. But what we have see is that no, extension is thriving more, and there's a way to actually leverage or for extension
Mm.
agent to actually use those tools, to reach more people and impact, particularly like where you mentioned the ratio of farmers to extension agents in this part of the world that is very huge compared to the
Yes.
FAO recommendation and global standard, right? And so if we have this sort of tool, podcasting, social media, ICTs, then we can reach more people without having to visit every individual farmers, right? So that's a really good one. Thank you so much for that. So I just want you to quickly touch on these. Because we'll be entering into the second section of the conversation, the digital tools. So before the rise of the mobile phones and internet in rural areas, I would like to ask you that what were the biggest limitations of traditional extension services in Nigeria?
Yeah, the traditional extension has a major problem, and that is the manpower problem. It's manpower and logistics, really. Of course, anybody is familiar with what we have in Nigeria, and especially in southwest Nigeria, because it's a bit better in the north. The governors or the state governments, do not value this particular component of agricultural setting, you know, and such that the number of recruits for essential personnel are quite few than should be. Then, apart from that, the logistics, like the what they need to, mobility, logistics, and the funding and all that. It has been a major problem with agricultural extension delivery and organizations in Nigeria. So traditional extension has faced serious problem, and that is why the ratio that we're talking about is that bad. I'm telling you, it's worse in some other states than the figure I mentioned earlier, 1 to 3,000. It's worse in some states. And so, and we are not seeing a drastic improvement in commitment of governments, especially in some of the states, to this particular arm of agricultural extension, agricultural development endeavor. So, but in the north, my experience in the north, in some of the organizations I have worked with in the north, is different. They really do so much more for agricultural extension personnel, fund them, provide the logistics and all that. But here in the southwest, it's worse, and in so many other places in Nigeria, it's worse. So that's why that figure, the average figure of ratio, is that bad. So that's been a major um, constraint to agricultural extension delivery, traditional agricultural extension delivery in Nigeria, and it's still a big one till the moment, and we don't know how soon we're going to get out of that.
So we get on to the second session, which we want to know which ICT tools have shown the most promise in transforming extension services. We are talking about mobile apps, SMEs, platform, community radio. So from your experience, we just want to know which ICT tools have shown the most promise in transforming extension services you have come to know.
Yeah, radio towers very high. Radio till date, it is still a major one. And if you're talking about the farmers who are mostly illiterate, who live in remote locations in countries, um, radio is still is the best bet to reach them, because it circumvents the issue of a network problem that makes some phone at times not work and things like that. Apart from that, issue of powering, radio still rely on battery, and most of the time this is still available to low cost to users. So radio still towers are ahead of all of them. However, since the advent of the use of other ICTs like the mobile phone feature of SMS happens to be a good one too. There are studies that have that have confirmed that those who receive SMS maybe for reminder of programs or giving information respond to them. For example, when SMS is sent, you are sure that at least 40% of those who receive the SMS will turn up, despite the fact that SMS has come with its own constraint of illiteracy. Despite that, people will still, for example, those who do not know how to read will still call people to, probably read for them and then respond to the content of the message. So there are studies that have established the fact that despite illiteracy problem, SMS is still very, very a good feature in the ICT, mobile phone ICT device component. So that itself is a good one. And then where we have farmers who use feature phones like the Android and who use advanced phone like Android, you know, WhatsApp happen to be a big one. So I have taken this one according to level of exposure or access to the tools, to the devices now. So for those who do not have any access, radio is still their best bet. But those who and then follow it up with SMS for those who have feature phone, basic phones, then those who have advanced phones like Android and whatever, WhatsApp is the top notch among them. As it were, WhatsApp has improved in recent years, so much so that it can now take document, video, audio, everything, and then the audio can even be used as if you are talking to them as like a radio. You get it? You pass the audio to them, so they listen to you as if they were listening to you on the radio. So convergence of the capacity of the tool is also at play there because it's an advanced device. So that's how I put it.
I mean, that's very brilliant, Professor Yekin, talking about how people say the traditional extension system will soon phase out, and here we are, the radio is still very relevant, SMS still very relevant, and even
Yeah,
why the WhatsApp is a new feature or an existing feature of, social hub, social media is
yeah,
also basic, right? So it lends voice to what we are seeing with the collaboration between traditional media and new media, digital media as
yeah.
well, that they can actually work together. And I think that is a better approach for us to actually follow to create a hybrid extension system. So we'll take one more question here and we dive into the third section where we'll discuss more on impact on small older farmers. So I just want you to quickly inform us about you're talking about radio, how successful it is, SMS, WhatsApp, whether there is like an example of successful ICT initiative that was established by the government or private platforms that leverage any of the impactful on the livelihood of the small older farmers.
Well, yes. In fact, till in Nigeria of today, there is, if we want to be sincere and truthful, no ICT intervention program has been successful as the growth enhancement support scheme of the federal government under Goodluck Jonathan that was powered by the then Minister Akinwumi Adesina. I'm telling you, it is a towering program and ambitious. In fact, when the program was coming on board, almost everybody doubted it. You want to get home for farmers? How many? How can that happen? What about the network problem? What about this? What about that? So many why it will not work are the reasons that people were talking about. But good enough, the person powering it knows what he wanted. He was determined, and then he had a supporting president who gave him the go ahead to fulfill it. And I'm telling you, that particular initiative till today is still a very good example. As of course, I've heard that so many countries have also, peeped into it to replicate in their own countries in Africa. So that happened because he saw a problem. He saw how to use technology, solve the problem. The problem then was the issue of bureaucracy and the middlemen, cutting us to make sure that the fertilizer that's supposed to be given to farmers reach them. They do not reach them. They will cut corners and make sure they have their way with them. And he used the technology to facilitate this. Of course, though we will not say it's 100% successful, but we can say authoritatively that it indeed shifted the goalpost. It made a landmark. And as it were, it didn't stop at the issue of facilitating access to inputs. Eventually, it was also used, that access to farmers was also used to facilitate so many other things, such that the farmers were able to, have access to government information and so many other things like that. So that was a very clear one and apart from that, farmers were able to have access to weather information, because the data is now with the government. It was given to the agency in charge of weather information, and then they have regular access to information, and then also it was also used to facilitate access to finance and all that from the government end. So all these are clear manifestation of a successful outing utilizing the basic, and it was basic phone that was used then. Just the phone that could take call and could facilitate information via SMS. So SMS was the major whatever. That's what they call it, wallet. And the wallet, of course, wallet is as per the record with the government, and then transmitting information to those who have access to the phone. So it was a very ambitious one, and of course, till today, we can still the vestiges of that success among the farmers who were early onboarded at that particular time of implementation of the program.
Yeah, very interesting, Professor Yekin, to know how we have a government initiative, especially with the GM, a scheme, and led by Dr. Akinwumi Adeshino that was deeply in. Let's continue. While you were giving us deep insight about, the initiative, you spoke on how it was impactful to the farmers, helping them to access inputs timely, via SMS. So I want you to expand further on that, how ICTs are actually changing, farmers' decision making in areas, or the several impact that we are seeing with ICTs on, farmers' livelihood, their life, their venture, and everything. So we are able to deeply appreciate the importance and role of ICT in farming and agriculture. Thank you.
In terms of how the ICT is affecting them or impacting them, these days, you see the information is not, the farmers are not waiting for information as they used to in the past. The information is now delivered, almost instantly for those who have access to the ICT devices. For example, the SMS. The SMS will deliver information as asked when necessary. They can tell you can start planting tomorrow. But previously, when they relied on extension agents visiting them, the extension agent would have visited them far ahead of the time, and then probably some people would not have been visited before the timing of the planting should start. But with the ICT, coming intervening in this matter, it makes it easy for them to deliver information on the go. And this particular one is, information is key. It's one of the most important inputs in the agricultural process. And the earlier we realize this one, the better for us. And so when we facilitate access to information from the farmer's end, and then access facilitate the information delivery from the practitioner's end, then we have done the best. And of course, to do this is government. You are talking about what government can do. Yeah, the government have been doing what they can do. An instance is what I cited regarding the previous government, and then other governments have also been doing whatever they think was necessary. But except that consistency has been a problem. When we have an issue before us, we need to treat this issue. We should continue to treat it until we have solution. We have, the expected results. But unfortunately, some of them will just abandon it midway, and when it is abandoned midway, it does not fulfill anything. So now with SMS, we have information on the go, and farmer will be able to utilize the information quickly. WhatsApp has also, in fact, it helped so many of them, But what I would say here is also a note of caution to farmers who rely on such kind of information utilizing their devices. They should know what source to take information from, because as it were, we have microphone with everybody. Everybody's just communicating, then there is commotion rather than communication. Now, this is what I mean. It is not everything that you see on Facebook, on YouTube, on whatever that is valid. You must make a choice of where to pick your information from. So, other than that, you may be misguided. So, if you are getting information SMS from who? From what organization? What's the integrity? What's the antecedents of such kind of organization? Then, if you are taking information from WhatsApp, it's not just any information you have from the WhatsApp that is correct. So, there must be a note of caution here, so that somebody will not say, well, they said, well, if you have information on WhatsApp, if you have information via SMS, it's okay, it will promote our productivity. No, that's not what I'm saying. You must make a choice, a conscious choice of where you are getting your information from, and this is very important.
Thank you so much for that, Professor Yekinni, helping us to understand or see the impact of ICTs on farmers' livelihoods, on their ventures, different activities. And I'm happy to hear of the speed, flexibility, and responsiveness that ICT is bringing to the game and changing extension services. And I like that you mentioned that uh, beyond, ICT helping to access information in real time, there is also a cautionary tale of disinformation, misinformation, and propaganda in which farmers they have to be very careful and also vet uh, what source they are getting information from. The kind of information that they are getting is not just about getting information, getting the right information that is going to be impactful. Prof, we are talking about the impact of ICTs on the livelihood of farmers, right? But let's look at the inclusion here. We have the digital divide. Initially, you were mentioning the constraint with, accessing the digital tools, and you mentioned illiteracy, infrastructure, some other things like that, and we see that there's usually this marginalization for women. So I like to ask, how are women being included in this ICT era for farming, and what benefits are they enjoying? Are they really being taken along, or we are seeing an increased division here?
Well, by its nature, ICT is supposed to be inclusive, because it is gender friendly. It does not discriminate any person that owns it or uses it. It does not know whether you are a male or a female. For it to respond adequately to your touch, to scrolling to wherever. Do you get it? But it cannot be said to be really inclusive yet, because there are a number of things that come in between women and utilization of ICT. Number one is access. Cost of access is a big one, and at times this is beyond what some women can afford. And studies have shown that proportionately men have more access to the tool than women. Then there is another one, which is cultural and how do I put it now? Cultural and traditional. Some men, especially those who are very, very traditional, do not trust their wives with access to phone, and limit them and forbid them. And say, for example, if you have to communicate with anybody, you communicate via my phone, something like that. So such kind of instances where that happens have also limited some women access to such communication devices. It has been said that while women access can be said to be around 60%, relatively men will be around 80%. So that is to say that the women access and utilization of ICT in the field is proportionately lower than their men counterpart. Even according to a document by FAO 2021, 22% of men encounter barrier against the use of ICT, whereas it is more than 40% of women have such kind of a barrier. So that is to say that it is intrinsic. The barrier is intrinsic in being a woman. So that is to tell us that in developing world, women access to ICT has been substantially lower than the access by their male counterpart. So, and we do not need to, we should not overlook this particular concern, because women are important stakeholders in the agricultural development endeavor. They are farmers, they are laborers, they are researchers, they are even personnel of agricultural extension. So that is to say that overlooking this kind of concern, it will be at the detriment of agricultural development generally. So it should not be overlooked. It's something that should be consciously and deliberately pursued to make sure that whatever limitations there are for women more than their men counterparts be removed by whoever is concerned among the stakeholders in the development field.
Oh, thank you so much, Professor Yekin, for that. We are entering the penultimate last but one section, in which we'll be discussing the challenges and realities, of course, offering solutions. For the next question, we want to know what are the major barriers preventing wider adoption of ICT by extension agents and farmers?
Well, major barriers have been network coverage and, of course, power to power these devices. Right? The network coverage, it is not profitable for the companies that provide these services, service providers, to establish connection points in the core rural areas. And of course, that is because they usually do not have many subscribers from those areas, the geographical locations. So because of that, they do not see why they should invest in the interland. Now, during the last administration, I am aware of several efforts by the NCC to force service providers to deploy services into the core rural areas as a matter of obligation, because they have a particular proportion. If you deploy so proportion of the geographical area in the urban area, you are supposed to provide this much in the rural areas. So they were calling them the attention to that particular obligation severally then. Now, this particular kind of policy is very important, and government should be consistent about it. It is when they are consistent about it that it will make access to network in rural areas progressive. Otherwise, it will be static because the people in the rural area cannot on their own demand and get this request for network deployment. So it is a major problem because even if I have device, if I can charge device and whatever, but without the network, I'm not connected. So it has been a major one. Although these network service providers, what they usually do, they follow road that link one major urban center to another. For example, if you travel from all the way from Ibadan to Abuja, along the road, you are likely to have network coverage all through. Not because of the rural areas you are passing through, but because of those who will be using the network while they travel. That's why they did that. So while they did that in some other some areas, the network will still get to the rural area around those locations. So these are some of the ways some rural areas have been having access to network. Of course, if you travel from Ibadan to Lagos, all through, there's not going to be a point of blind spot. They are going to have network all through. So they did these ones to provide service for potential travelers who they know will be patronizing them on their networks. So this, apart from what they do along the pathways of major whatever, not much has not been done into the core hinterland of rural areas. So it has been a major problem. Then the other one is power. Although in here, I mean, with advent of solar, inverter, whatever, it is now easier to have power, isolated power in different locations anywhere. Unlike when everybody depended on the national grid. So access to power has been easier. There are some constituency projects of National Assembly members that are giving rural areas access to power, by installing solar and inverter for them, charging points and whatever. So this has also been helping. So I can say authoritatively that it's easier to solve the problem of power, than the problem of network. Because that problem of network has to be deliberately pursued by the federal government through the Federal Ministry of Communication and Digital Economy to make sure that what the network service providers need to do, they do them. And if that is not done, of course, it's a failure on the entire system, not only for agriculture.
Yeah, thank you so much, Professor Yekin. We need to deepen ICT infrastructure in the rural part. This way, we can bridge the gap between the tech savvy and the not tech savvy farmers. And it's not only about that, we can also bridge the rural urban gap because one of the reasons why we have increasing rural urban migration is because there are no facilities, infrastructure that support,
Yeah,
better lives here, and even that
you're
support
right.
the work of extension workers as well. So we have to make that place as livable as possible as we would have in urban area.
Yeah.
So we'll take one more question here, then we'll get straight into the last section of this conversation. And want to thank our listeners that are still with us, and our special participant today, Professor Stella Odebode, and Ibrahim Abdullah, and Tunji Awokoyo saying hi. We are deeply appreciative for you joining us and listening to what we have to say today. And if you've got any question, you can always drop that in the comment section. So we'll proceed to the last question in the penultimate section. want to look at the digital tools, how they are falling short or created new problem. I mean, when you're talking about the positive of digital tools, you also mentioned one negative that we address, the ease of spread of misinformation. So now that we are having, increased adoption of digital tools, emerging tests, are there, instead of, solving the inherent problems that we have, are new problems being created? If so, if they are, could you enlighten us on that? Thank you.
Yeah, of course, this is a human thing, and with human thing, there are at times unexpected consequences. You know, so for example, in projects where digital tools have been deployed, um, those who were onboarded first, had advantage than others who came in later, and then than those who are not onboarded at all. And those who became onboarded first have since moved on. They became better than those who joined later. And then, of course, even financially, their financial capacity was improved, and then they become better, so much so that they were able to acquire more advanced phones and are able to, utilize the tools better. And this one created a digital gap between them and those who are coming in later on. And of course, that's a social problem. And when we have social problem, it also has its own different dimensions, that will also, come afterward. So that's a problem. Apart from that, the other problem is the one I warned earlier about, believing that, for example, a traditional person believes that whatever I hear on radio is a fact. And so they believe radio, they trust radio. And then such kind of traditional person, when they have access to, advanced phone like this, may think everything they also see on the phone is also true. And of course, we can see that clearly. The way people forward messages, and you want to believe that it is what you believe in, and you accept that you forward. So you see the way people forward false information, unfounded information too, I don't know, too foolish to be true. Yet you see people forward them. That is to say that they have carried the trust they had on the traditional radio, even to this current device that we are using.
We head on to the last part of the conversation. I think we are doing good on time, Professor Yekin. Thank you for today. You've been very brief, and the delivery has been very top notch in the insights. I've learned new things, a lot of things today. I'm really happy about that. So, looking ahead to the next 5 to 10 years, we have rapidly emerging technologies, different of them. So, I want to ask you, what emerging technologies do you believe will have the biggest impact in this space that we've been discussing about agriculture, farming, smallholder farming?
You see, there are emerging technologies really, and then they are coming with their challenges and, of course, opportunities. So the opportunities is what I'm going to dwell on. The opportunity of course, of AI is there. The opportunity of voice over interaction, text to voice, voice to text, and all that, is also there. That personnel, research personnel, and extension agents can utilize to develop content. Now, there is content. Of course, I told you earlier, content is not the problem, but appropriate content is a problem. Appropriate content is a problem. If, for example, if a farmer has access to advanced phone like the one you have there and want to obtain information, can he get the information that is, specific and relevant to his own call and in the language he understands? So this kind of content are still lagging behind. They are lacking. The system is lagging behind in that wise. So there are so many tools in advance. I mean, the emerging technology that can help us to fulfill these ones. So One of it is even if you don't understand Yoruba as such, you can put your whatever down in English and make it get translated into Yoruba, and then you can even ask a voice over it, and you can develop only one video, maybe on how to plant yam, and then do a voiceover in major languages in the country, and then that particular content will be relevant for everybody that have access to them, even despite the fact that you do not speak those other languages. So these are emerging technologies that are here that could be utilized to fulfill need of the moment, because the extension agents need to, get to know more about some of these technologies I'm talking about, and then know how to utilize them to fulfill the need of the moment. Content is still a major one. There are so many platforms now that you can create to make sure people have access to appropriate information, but the appropriate information must be available before you can pass them through those platforms. So now I'm also wondering how that particular, because I've not seen one single entity in the country that will be in charge of coordination of gathering all the content. This is what I mean. Federal Ministry of Education, Federal Ministry of Agriculture is there. We have the Federal Department of Agricultural Extension, but who is going to be in charge to coordinate and gather all kinds of information that the farmers in the country need? Who is going to drive it? Who is going to determine what kind of information we need, and then so that when those information are available, gather them, make them available for use for whatever platform they are going to be disseminating through. So this is a major one, and it's still lacking till today. So the Federal Ministry of Agriculture has not responded to the changing moments. That's what I'm saying in essence. They have not responded as far organizing digital information in a way that will be useful to the recipients, that is the farmer, the last mile. And this is key. When we are able to achieve this one, we are going to go places. And then we just need to kickstart the process. When we kickstart the process, others will join, and before we know it, we'll be moving on. So this is a major one. And we may not say, yeah, well, that's not how they do it in the US. No. Our situation is not the same as their situation there. In our situation here, most of our audience do not understand English. In their own situation, all of them understand English. And English happens to be the major language of the content of the website. Do you get it? So this is a difference. And then, so we need to, really plan very well to make sure that what we want to do, we want to do it and want to really go into it.
I like that this is also helping to highlight, gap. And the gap you've mentioned there is not just about infrastructure, facility, and all that. The readiness of governments, their adjustments, to ICT, it helps a lot. And also talking about collating content, and making them accessible to the farmers. And I think that collating this content can actually help in vetting the content before passing it across to farmers. In this way, we cut propaganda, disinformation, misinformation.
Yeah,
Farmers
yeah.
have access to appropriate and impactful, information. And I'll go on to the next question, but I want you to inform the agricultural graduates listening to us here that the question after this I will be asked will be on practical advice, that would help you. So if you are with us, stay tuned so that you get advice from our leading professors on what you can apply to your career life and make it transform. Right. So let's go to policy changes and investment. So we've been talking about challenges, constraints, difficulties, and what governments need to work on. What policy changes or investments do you think the government and private sector need to make to accelerate this digital revolution. You spoke about how when you travel from across Lagos Ibadan Expressway, there is network connection along that part. But as soon as you enter into the interland, there is nothing, simply because it's not rewarding to actually invest ICT in those places. It's actually rewarding, but the nature of how they see it
It's
is
not
different,
profitable to them.
right?
Yeah.
It's not profitable to them. So I want you to help us address this with the policy and investment approach we think that we can uh, take to address these issues. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I mentioned it while I was, talking around that area the other time about the constraint. You know, the government, the federal government, the executive council need to instruct the Federal Ministry of Communication and Digital Economy precisely to pursue it with the service providers that they must, as a matter of obligation. I understand from that previous whatever when Pantami was the Minister of Communication, he was telling them that it is part of the obligation they owe the country, But that particular aspect of the obligation is not just being fulfilled. That's the problem. So the government need to demand it from them. That's a major one. And when they do that, even when they do enough, they should give them incentives to do more. Maybe they're going to have some tax relief by doing more or whatever. They should incentivize deployment of network into the hinterland. When that happens, government will also be able to cover their people better. The people will also be able to interact with the government better. They probably will be able to do more transactions and businesses better. Government will be able to have tax better. No, so it's win-win eventually. So development, economic development, development, capacity building will also, be enhanced when that happens. So government need to really do it. It's not only for agriculture. That's what I'm saying. It's for total human development. So, but when that happens, agriculture will also, fare better. Extension information delivery will also be able to, be fulfilled easily. So that is one aspect of it. So that infrastructural development is important, and it can only be driven by the government, because the government is not the one investing in physical infrastructure, in communication infrastructure currently. It is the service providers that are private entities licensed by the government. So government need to pursue it and make sure that the licensed organizations are doing the right thing, and then also incentivize doing more. So that's number one. Number two, the organization of information, in Nigeria, content development in Nigeria need to be better organized. And I am at this point using this platform to make a proposal. The proposal is this: the as a professor or somebody in research organizations or teaching organizations like myself, what we need to do is to publish in journals, international journals, local journals, to make sure that what we are doing is known to other knowledge stakeholders in the world. Then I'll be promoted. We need to have some tweak in this. That particular journal where I published, the farmer does not have access to it. Some of those who need the content do not have access to them. But when we do content, if we can do audio content, we can do video content, such that those who need them will see them. And then when we do that, we should be promoted on that basis. Not only publishing in some journals that the stakeholders cannot have access to. So when this happens, it will engender development. That means as I'm getting promoted, as I'm moving up the ladder of my career, I'm also developing people. I'm giving out appropriate information. When this happens, it is going to be a win-win for everybody. Then who will do this? ARCN, that is in charge of agricultural research organizations, NUC, that is in charge of universities, maybe College of Education, National Council of Quality Education, and all the coordinating entities, probably with Federal Ministry of Communication and Digital Economy. A collaboration, interministerial collaboration like that, can come up with a robust system that will also validate the content I mean, you will review when you are publishing, you will review. Who is going to review it? Who is going to review that content? When that content is reviewed as appropriate, then it will be accepted, then it can be published, then you promote it. So who is going to put all the review board on ground? Who is going to validate the content and all that? This one, when we put it on ground, it will be a win-win for everybody. So to be a real move towards development, and any content that comes out from such endeavor will be useful to the farmers, will be useful to the extension agent, will be useful to everybody, apart from putting in some obscure platforms that nobody can have access to. So I think this one is a major one. It's going to be a major shift, because that's why I'm calling it a proposal. It's going to be a major shift. That has to be deliberately pursued. Otherwise, we are just going to be doing the same thing. I mean, they are doing the same thing the same way and expecting different results, and that will not happen. So that's another one that I feel, and a policy change is required to drive this. And without that policy change, we will still be on the same spot.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I think this particular part of the conversation needs to be cut out and disseminated out there. And it's actually important that you are talking about this, and it's good that we hear from people who have done the research, they have knowledge, and what the problem is, what the gap is. Is one of the functions that this podcast is serving, to actually hear from the research, hear from people who are doing the real job, and link that with the policymakers, the farmers, for them to understand what is actually going on, what is needed, right? And I got two things from what you said, to incentivize infrastructural development, ICT, in the interlands. Because if we have this integrated understanding, thinking of how important the rural economy is to national development, I mean, it provides the food, the resources that are used in other sectors, also the manpower. We have everybody youth, but because there's this divide, we are having youth migrating for better living, to and farming and other livelihoods are being left to the aging population there, which is not
Yeah.
meant to be so. So what we should be thinking about is how do we ensure that we have our ICT telecommunication, companies, they are investing in those places so that it is rewarding for them, and they have this deeper thinking of corporate social responsibility for the community of operation, the nation where they are operating, right? And I like that you did not just dwell on that, you also spoke on, what how to make knowledge content accessible, available. Many of these researches are being published in domain where they are reachable to farmers, right? And many times they are in technical terms that the farmers cannot understand. And it's very
Exactly.
brilliant that you bring this approach that if you can make, instead of publishing words, if you can publish audio, video content. I mean, if I can see what you are saying and or hear what you are saying and in a familiar language, it's going to make more impact. And uh, you have thought about it the right way. The promotion should not just be, how much publications are you able to make, but now looking at it in a different dimension. But my question would be, how do we incentivize this so that the researchers are also um, following this?
Yeah.
Um, that okay, you want to address that?
Yes. Yeah. I want to. You said, how do we incentivize it?
Okay,
Yeah, incentivizing
yes, sir.
is already incentivized, because ordinarily publication has been incentivized by the system. If you don't publish,
Mm,
as a researcher, as a lecturer, you cannot advance. So it's already
mm,
incentivized. And if we turn the pathway of such publication from publishing into some journal platforms into real publication that can be accessible by the people, then that is the certification, that we're talking about. And then when you publish like that, you have your career advancement.
All right, thank you so much. So we have Olamide Nwaize saying that thank you, Prof. This is so enlightening, and I think she has a contribution or question. I'm quoting her now. You mentioned that agric extension content must be appropriate. Please, sir, what makes an appropriate content, particularly via social media? Some of us manage the social media handles for agric organizations. Can you briefly touch on that before we go on to the final questions of the day?
Yeah, well, that's appropriate content is just what I just mentioned now. When you publish inside a journal, it's for that particular platform for the audience of that particular one. But when we are talking about an appropriate content for your farmers, to other stakeholders who are expecting to hear from you, you make it appropriate to them. What address their problem is what is appropriate to them, what is relevant to them, and then also in the language they can relate with. And then you also break it down to their level, not using too much of technical language, but everyday language they can understand. So with that, you are bringing forth an appropriate content. That's what I mean.
Yeah, Olamide, so I trust that that answers your question. We'll move on to the last but one question, and it will be: what practical advice would you give to young agricultural graduates who want to build ICT solutions for Nigerian farmers? What advice would you give them?
Well, what I would say is that as somebody who has been in this space for some time, I see young persons having serious advantage. They can use the advantage of platforms to dish out good content, like Lasgidi is doing. Other people can also come on board. I will say that you are not, if you come on board and you are doing what he's doing, you are not going to be rivaling him. You are also just going to be complementing what he has been doing, because we need many of his like. And then whether it's blog you want to go to or whatever, just make sure that you make it appropriate, you make it familiar, define your audience, go for them, and then make sure what you are giving to them is and then as it were, you don't need several millions of naira to establish an entity you call a broadcasting station. It's also is available at your disposal when you have what do you call it, phone, and then network you are on. Then you may be looking at it, oh, what will be my gain? The gain will come. Don't worry. Just be consistent, move on, and then before you know it, you have that. And then the issue is also, to make sure that whatever you are doing is also breaking the illiteracy barrier. So that you are going to reach these people regardless of the fact that they are illiterate. You reach out to them in their own local languages, and then make sure that the content they get from you, the moment they see first one, they will come back again. And then when you come and get to them, they will make you the first point of call for whatever information they need. And by the time you are able to fulfill that, you are fulfilling need. You are bridging gap. And then your gain may come in one of the two ways. It's either you have so many subscribers on your platform that you are able to gain money from that, or entities that are looking at serious-minded organizations that are, making difference in development will see you, will notice you, and then will, support your activity. All these are means of, continue within the space. I mean, the development space, while you are also, helping other people and helping yourself as well.
Yeah, thank you. So two things I took from there for graduates wanting to participate in proffering solution, ICT solutions to Nigerian farmers is to, first of all, have a mind that you want to do it and provide relevant content and be very, very consistent, right? So we'll move on to the last question of the day. Professor Yekin, if you could design the ideal future-ready extension service for Nigeria, what would it look like? I know the question is broad, but I just want you to kind of be specific about it and, from your own perspective, we'd like to hear
Thank
from
you
you.
very much. I think I have mentioned it earlier. I've mentioned it earlier. If I could do that, what I would do is I will want to be supported by the government for all the entities that are relevant, such that whoever needs to publish in those institutions, whether agric extension, I mean agric research organization, agric extension organizations, the universities, they will have a proportion of their publications as digital content. Digital content that will be relevant to specified, local audience. Do you get it? So, and that one will also, be in the appropriate language for them. So, when we're doling out content, appropriate content for these people, when that happens, when that happens, the country will know that we are breaking the jinx, because it will fulfill the need of the farmers, fulfill the need of other stakeholders in value chain, and then be it be you, EP dealer, everybody will be appropriately targeted by the content, and the content will be delivered, and then they will have the value. So if I am opportune to say a thing to those who are in charge, that's what I will advocate for. So because it can only be taken at the highest level, because it requires a drastic policy change, and the drastic policy change will change the expectation of incumbents on what they need to do to have career advancement, and that career advancement, will be maybe publishing and all that, all whatnot. Then apart from that, the extent to which this one are participatory, is also value. When you are creating a content for to be utilized by people in rural areas, including rural people in that particular content is also valuable, taking their own view into it and all that. So all these ones, make the content very robust, and of course, this will be part of the things that will be considered when they are being validated or reviewed for appropriateness, by for use by the audience ultimately.
Well, there you have it. Thank you so much, Professor Yekin. Deeply insightful, educative words from the source itself. I'm really appreciative of that. And if you are just joining us, just a quick summary before we proceed to ending the conversation today. We started with assessing where we are with ICTs. What are the limitations? Then the coming of digital tools. What impact have they had? And also, what are the constraints to actually onboarding to ICT, mentioned quite a few: infrastructure, facilities, government adjustment. We mentioned all this and also try to assess the impact it has had on, the women themselves, whether it hasn't widen the digital divide gap, right? And we try to think about some of the things that we can actually do to bridge the gap between tech savvy and not tech savvy, farmers and all that, and also, policy recommendation. And we spoke on a number of things and also had future outlook on that. Like Professor Yakina said, we need to make more relevant content. And it's not just about the words, also audio and video uh, formats and being published in domain readily accessible to the farmers, right? So this is one of it. We are having video conversation being aired on YouTube, easily accessible, and it's one of the problems that we are solving. So if you are like us and you are very concerned about the transformation, revolution of the agricultural space and impacting to the players, the stakeholders, then you want to join us on this conversation that we hold, weekly. For the next conversation that we'll be having, it will be with Dr. Olufolake Yunus Adelakun. Will be talking about raising the next generation, in quotes, family and youth development in rural Nigeria. So we are talking about rural Nigeria. We talk about the rural economy while conversing how important it is, to national development. You don't want to miss it. And so we are going to communicate on how you can join soon. So, Professor Yekinni, you did most of the job today. So I want to thank you so much for coming on to
Now, thank
the show.
you.
And, we are going to do our job and make sure that this is put out there, all your recommendation, your insight, and your thoughts are going to be published. And the good thing about this is going to be immortalized, just as every digital content is. That
Yes.
it's not only people that are listening to us that will be able to listen to it, but people will be able to listen in the future and commend you for your great thoughts. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you to the audience.
Very much.
Thank you to our special guest, Professor Odebode. Thank you, Ibrahim Abdullah. Thank you, Tunji Awokuyo. Thank you, Alamide Unwa Eze, and others that have been listening to us, on the go, not able to participate for one reason or the other. We say thank you. We look forward to having you next. And before I go, I like to say with what Professor Yekinni has started with, you should subscribe to our podcast. Subscribe here. We are just going this video part of it, but we are very, very active on Spotify, right? So just search for the Lasgidi Farmer Podcast on Spotify. You have it. All our conversation deeply impactful with very knowledgeable and practicing stakeholders. Thank you for joining us today. I proceed to end this space. Thank you, Professor Yekinni.